understanding is the army of ancient Rome was not the best of the ancient civilizations. Many people think that the Roman army was so powerful. They had a huge empire, so they had to be powerful, right? Not exactly. When the army conquered some cities, those cities didn't even fight, making it easy for Rome to take over. The reason was the cities wanted to be protected, but the empire was ultimately defeated. The Roman Empire was powerful, sure, but it was not the most superior army. An example, the Shang army. They were especially powerful because they had developed bronze weapons, and it was important that this army was powerful because the kings depended on them to rule and expand the empire, making this army not only be powerful, but also have leadership.
I'm defending the point that Romans did have the best military of ancient civilizations, and I agree with what you're saying about how people didn't fight, but why do you think they didn't fight? It's because they didn't want to fight. I mean, think about it. It was a pretty sweet deal back then just to surrender to the Roman army. I mean, if you surrender, sure, you have to give up a couple of men to join them, but then you have the protection, and you don't have to end up getting your entire civilization pillaged and conquered until you finally had to give in anyway. So they just figured, hey, why not just join them now? Also, the Romans were such a good army because they had the numbers. They had plebeians and patricians, and the reason the plebeians weren't the only people in the army is because they weren't allowed to be legionnaires. And they had so many legions and legionnaires, which contained up to 6,000 men per. And with so many legions, you could just walk in there, overpower them, even if they didn't even put up a fight. And many examples like the Carthaginians. Although the Carthaginians did fight bravely, let's face it, they lost both wars.
I am aware of the fact that these cities that didn't fight wanted to become part of the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire was ultimately defeated. And an interesting fact: the Roman laws included that you had to fight in the army. So many people who were settled into the Roman Empire were recruited to fight. Hence, these soldiers had little or no loyalty to Rome, making it more likely for the Roman Empire to turn against Rome. And Rome was threatened by the Germanic tribes. In 410 CE, the Visigoths attacked and looted the city of Rome. The last emperor in the west lost his throne to a Germanic leader. Then the western part of the empire began to dissolve into separate kingdoms ruled by different tribes. So the empire was ultimately defeated, as I stated before.
Now, I agree that they were defeated, but that's because the Emperor Constantine divided up the empire into different little sections, and the Roman army was good because it had that size and it had that intimidation factor. But when they're all spread out and there's only like a legion here, a legion there, a legion here, a legion there, there's not enough people to defend against a huge attack by people joining up together. But if they were together, I bet you they could have defeated almost any ancient civilization with their army, and maybe they would still be in power today. Probably not as much, but they could. Also, the Romans had great strategies, and that helped them win as well. From the pig's head, which they used to spear through ranks of soldiers in order to get to the middle, or to the vital cavalry and things like that. But they also had the turtle, which they're most infamous for, with the shields on top, shields on the side, in order to avoid the fire from archers and cavalry that were charging. But probably the least recognized, but one of the most effective, was the box. And they would just put all their shields in a protective box around everyone with a centurion in the middle, and they could fight outward.
Well, I don't completely agree that that these strategies were super powerful, because as I mentioned before, there were other armies who had more power, like they had skills and they had weapons, and so yes, and I don't think that strategies is the only part of being a very powerful army. I think you have to have, as I said before, skills and weapons and a good position for your empire.
For my closing remarks, I would like to state that they didn't just have the strategy. They also trained daily by running around the city and training. And the new recruits would go through about a 6-week training regimen of just full on working, running, training with 60 pounds of gear on your back. And that gave them that endurance and the skills that they needed in order to fight back with not only strategy but also with skill. And lastly, they also had technology back then. Like nowadays, gee, you have a bow and arrow, that's great. But back then, bow and arrows were important. And other things like they put nails in their shoes to give them grip and in order so that they wouldn't wear out. Therefore, letting them march quicker and get to places faster, as well as keep fighting throughout the war rather than tire out halfway through and get defeated.